In this video, I want to compare the Baja Designs LP6 versus the Rigid 360 series pod lights. The only issue is, after looking at the results of our testing, the LP6 absolutely decimates the Rigid pod lights. So if you guys were looking for helpful buyer's advice right off the bat, just spend your money on the Baja Designs LP6. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why that is. We're going to talk about beam patterns, we're going to talk about brightness. So follow us, let's get rolling. We sell a whole bunch of off-road pod lights on our website, headlightrevolution.com, and we do sell the Rigid as well. There's two beam patterns we're going to discuss. With the LP6, it's the spot and combo or driving beam pattern, and with the Rigid, it's the spot and combo beam pattern. I want to show you guys the brightness, and how we're testing this is with the Konica Minolta T10A Lux meter. We're converting that to Candela. What is Candela exactly? It's the photometric intensity of the measured single solid angle. Essentially, it's the proper way to describe the intensity of these pod lights to compare to one another. And if you want to see exactly how we tested these to give you guys the most accurate measurements possible, check out the other video of how we tested. So first I want to talk about the spot beam pattern. The spot beam pattern is that tight beam pattern right down in the middle with not a lot of ambient light, and that is supposed to give you that high speed light output. Both of these companies were founded in the Baja racing. You know, that is in the dirt when they're going as fast as they can and long straight stretches of road. You do need some kind of spot beam pattern. You need a really intense beam pattern that's going to centralize all of that light output as far down as you can see. The only thing is, a lot of the time I see these be put on vehicles, they can't really go 150 miles an hour. And so I personally would like to see a little bit more ambient light around the spot beam pattern. It's just a little bit more usable. If you are specifically Baja racing, you do want that beam pattern as tight as possible. So let's first discuss the LP6, show you guys the light output of the spot beam pattern. These come in at around $475. They have the backlight, which is really cool. Even on the Baja Designs website, we could not find the claimed Candela, but in our testing, we measured 276,000 Candela. As you can see, you've got a real soft spot with lots of spillage. It's not a super tight beam pattern that I would like out of a spot off-road pod light. The Baja Designs does have an amber version, and it looks like this, still at around $475, but they do have that backlight still. And in our testing here, we measured 229,300. Throughout this entire video, you'll notice that when we show you guys the yellow output, they are not quite as bright as the white. That is because oftentimes you'll lose quite a bit of brightness switching from a white lens to a yellow lens or converting to a yellow output. But what about Rigid Industries? Their 360 series 6-inch white spot beam patterns. How do they compare? Well, first off, the price of these are $638. That's really high, but you should note that these only come in pairs. In our testing, we measured 155,500 Candela. As you can see, the results are pretty conclusive. The LP6 absolutely annihilates the Rigid in the brightness department. So I wanted to take a second to talk about backlights before we then dive into the combo beam patterns. If you're going to get the spot beam pattern, it only comes in amber. If you did want the backlight color to be a red or a blue or a green, you do have to order just the driving/combo beam pattern. It's not available in the spot beam pattern from what I can tell on the website. Now the Rigid 360 series pod lights do have a different backlight. They do have a white backlight, but they have a couple other colors to choose from as well. In addition to the white, you can get a red backlight, a blue backlight, or an amber backlight. Now the backlights are individually controlled. You can power these up to a Switch Pro or something like that, and you can get that backlight to illuminate, and then you can push another button to then get your light output. The other thing is, when it comes to the wiring, I really don't like the Rigid's wiring. Let me show you guys. Let me shut this off really quick. Now, on the back side of the LP6, this is a Deutsch connector right here. So this is what connects to the back. And this right here is waterproof for the most part. You're not gonna have water intrusion, so that's not gonna be a failure point. These pod lights are obviously gonna be out in the elements, and we don't want them to fail. If it's a really good or really expensive pod light like the Rigid, you don't want them to fail because of poor wiring. And I'll get to the wiring of the Rigid in a second, but I want it to be something like this. You see how it's got a 4-pin Deutsch connector? The reason being is because it's got that backlight. Otherwise it would only have a 2-pin Deutsch connector, but I love this kind of connector because it's just waterproof. So good job on Baja Designs. Here's what the wiring looks like on the Rigid. It's bare wiring, and I just can't help but think that this is going to be a failure point. So this is what the backside looks like. There's 3 wires here. There's a red, there's a black, obviously the battery, and then this one right here. So not my favorite. This is not waterproof in my opinion. Can you get it to work? Can you use heat shrink? Can you do all of that? Sure, why not? But I just don't love the connection compared to the Baja Designs. So anyways, I don't want to keep dumping on Rigid because we do sell it on our website. It is one of the brightest. We've done these tests and Rigid is one of the brightest out there in the world, but compared to the top maybe 5 or 6, no, it doesn't make the cut. But overall, if you're gonna buy something from say Amazon or eBay for 60 bucks, absolutely Rigid's going to be brighter. So let me show you guys the combo beam patterns real quick. All right, something I'm real interested in, the Baja Designs LP6 Pro with the combo/driving beam pattern. We measured the Candela at 203,100. Looking at the beam pattern, you can see a slightly vertical, tightened center flood, same circular shape with a soft hotspot. This is what the LP6 Pro from Baja Designs looks like in the combo beam pattern. Still around $475. They do have a backlight, whether it was the white or the yellow, and we measured 168,700. The beam pattern is essentially the exact same as the white version. The Rigid Industries 360 series 6-inch. This is their driving/combo beam pattern. They do have a backlight. The price of these pod lights at the time of this video was around $638. I don't see a claim Candela, but we measured it and got 58,700. We got the Lux at 10 meters, reading 5,870. So judging by the light outputs, the results are conclusive. Yes, the LP6 is much better when it comes to the light output and the way that the light output is emitted, in my opinion. So at the end of the day, which one would I recommend? Obviously this one. But that's not just the case, right? You can't just say this one's best, buy this, because this is almost $500 for one, whereas these are 600 and something, but they are sold in pairs. So these are substantially cheaper and they're still a really good pod light. You're still going to get that awesome beam pattern. You're still going to get the very similar brightness to the other pod lights on the market that we've tested before. The thing is, this one's just better, but it's much more expensive. So it really comes down to what you can afford, what you're actually doing with your vehicle, because at the end of the day, maybe if your car doesn't go 185 miles an hour, you don't actually need all of this brightness, because it's very true, it's not really usable unless you're going that fast. You don't need all of that brightness. Maybe you want to save some of your money, buy the Rigid, and then you can get some more, say, aftermarket fog lights or some ditch light brackets so you can actually have more illumination in other areas to help you guys when you're driving at nighttime or when you're Bajaing. Giving you guys one more look at the light outputs. The spot beam pattern from the Rigid, you can see that nice square. It's very controlled. You still got plenty of illumination. The brightness is just not where I would like it to be. Again, both of these spot beam patterns have a lot more illumination around just the spot, which is what I like. That's very helpful when you're driving at nighttime and actually using this outside. 276,000 Candela from the LP6. It pretty much is a no-brainer which one you would rather have. When looking at the combo beam pattern, both of which have a little bit different color, as you can see, but the measured Candela really does tell the full story here. Rigid definitely has the beam pattern control. You've got the light output emitting exactly how you want it, but simply it's just not bright enough for our taste. If you want to see how these stack up to about $15,000 worth of the best other pod lights out there, go watch that video. We did a big pod light shootout about a year ago. The results are pretty conclusive which ones are best. Be sure to check that out. Also, we sell a lot of other products at Headlight Revolution for your vehicle specifically. All you got to do is type in your year, make, and model, and we'll show you guys everything that's truly been tested.